voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
The President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has underlined that Algeria's commitment as a founding member to promoting the principles and achieving the objectives of the African peer review mechanism is a natural extension of its active participation in the AU's continental mechanisms based on respecting the sovereignty of member states, the African multilateral system, and intergovernmental cooperation among the continent's countries. The Minister of War, Veterans and Right Holders, Abdelmalik Tashrif, stated today in Adrar that the nuclear tests conducted by France in southern Algeria decades ago constituted a fully fledged crime that violated nature and the human right to exist. And Israeli occupation forces fired a tear gas toward worshippers at a mosque in the town of Kafr Malik, east of Ramallah, while detaining several others in the West Bank. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. First in our news, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has underlined that Algeria's commitment as a founding member to promoting the principles and achieving the objectives of the African Peer Review Mechanism, APRM, is a natural extension of its active participation in the African Union's continental mechanisms based on respecting the sovereignty of member states, the African multilateral system, and intergovernmental cooperation among the continent's countries. In a message read on his behalf by Prime Minister Sifi Ghrieb before the participants of the 35th Ordinary Session of the APRM Summit of Heads of State and Government, currently being held in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, President Tebboune, in his capacity as the current chair of the APRM, expressed his sincere thanks and appreciation to the Ethiopian authorities and AU leaders for the generous hospitality, warm welcome, and the excellent preparation and organization of this summit. The head of the Algerian state stressed that this summit, which marks the end of Algeria's rotating chairmanship of the APRM Forum of Heads of State and Government, constitutes a significant institutional moment that allows for a presentation of the achievements of Algeria's chairmanship during the 2024-2026 period and a smooth and orderly handover of the forum's chairmanship to the sisterly Republic of Uganda in accordance with the APRM's internal rules and relevant African Union resolutions. He added that Algeria's commitment as a founding member to promoting the principles and achieving the objectives of the APRM is a natural extension of its active participation in the African Union's continental mechanisms. It also aligns with Algeria's diplomatic tradition of promoting dialogue and African solutions to African challenges. Let's listen to Mr. Sifi Ghrieb.
تشكل هذه القمة التي ستشهد نهاية.
This summit, which will mark the end of Algeria's rotating presidency of the African Peer Review Mechanism Forum, constitutes an important institutional moment that allows for the presentation of the Algerian presidency achievements during the period 2024-2026 on the one hand, and the smooth and orderly handover of the forum's presidency to the sisterly Republic of Uganda in accordance with the internal rules of the APRM and the African Union continents. Algeria's commitment as a founding member to promoting the principles and achieving the objectives of the APRM is a natural extension of its active participation in the African Union's continental mechanisms. This commitment is based on respecting the sovereignty of member states, the African multilateral system, and intergovernmental cooperation among the countries of the continent. It is also consistent with Algeria's diplomatic traditions aimed at promoting dialogue and strengthening African solutions to African challenges.
The President of the Republic recalled that Algeria assumed the presidency of this forum in February 2024, a period marked by a number of challenges facing the continent in the areas of governance, peace and security, sustainable development, and institutional resilience, stressing that during its presidency, Algeria realized several important achievements, including the adoption and implementation of the African Peer Review Mechanism's strategic plan for 2025-2028, based on the principles of professionalism, performance, and integrity, the strengthening of governance assessment mechanisms through the conduct and and delivery of sectoral and targeted assessments, as well as the integration of e-governance as a key theme within the APRM and the enhancement of the APRM's contribution to conflict prevention, as well as the implementation of the initiative to establish an African credit rating agency.
لقد عرفت فترة الرئاسة الجزائرية.
Algeria's presidency term was marked by several important achievements, including in particular the adoption and implementation of the African Peer Review Mechanism strategic plan for the period 2025-2028, strengthening governance assessment mechanisms through conducting and delivering sectoral and targeted assessments, integrating e-governance as a key theme in the African Peer Review Mechanism, promoting the African mechanism's contribution to conflict prevention, particularly through institutional dialogue with the African Union Peer and Security Council, and making significant progress in implementing an initiative to establish an African credit rating agency, which is a strategic initiative aimed at strengthening the continent's economic and financial resilience.
President Tebboune stressed that in addition to the ongoing political and institutional support for the mechanism, the Algerian presidency provided a voluntary financial contribution worth $1 million. Algerian Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad and African Affairs Ahmed Attaf held a series of bilateral meetings on Thursday in Addis Ababa on the sidelines of the second day of the African Union Executive Council, according to a ministry statement. During talks with Mauritanian Foreign Minister Mohamed Salim Ould Merzoug, the two sides reviewed the strong brotherly relations between Algeria and Mauritania and discussed ways to further strengthen cooperation, particularly ahead of the upcoming Algerian-Mauritanian Joint High Commission meeting. They also exchanged views on developments in their shared regional environment. In a separate meeting with Namibia's Minister of the International Relations and Trade, Selma Asipala Moussaoui, both ministers discussed key African issues and explored ways to elevate bilateral relations, notably through expanding economic cooperation. Mr. Attaf also met with Burundi's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Regional Integration and Development Cooperation, Albert Shingiro. On this occasion, he congratulated Burundi ahead of its assumption of the African Union's rotating presidency and affirmed Algeria's support for Burundi's efforts to advance peace, development, and integration across the continent. The two sides also discussed strengthening bilateral relations in preparation for upcoming high-level engagements. During talks with Kenya's Cabinet Secretary for Foreign and Diaspora Affairs, Musalia Mudavadi, discussions focused on current developments in Africa, particularly in regions of mutual interest, as well as prospects for further enhancing Algerian-Kenyan relations. Mr. Attaf further held talks with Lesotho's Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Relations, Legion Mponta Jani, congratulating Lesotho on its election to the African Union Peace and Security Council and reaffirming Algeria's readiness to enhance coordination with this key body. Both sides also agreed to explore additional opportunities for economic and development cooperation. Still with the domestic file, the Minister of State, Minister of Hydrocarbons and Mines, Mohamed Arqab, arrived Thursday in the capital of Burkina Faso, Ouagadougou, on a working visit aimed at strengthening bilateral cooperation between the two countries. According to a statement from the ministry, Mr. Arqab is leading a high-level delegation that includes the Minister of Energy and Renewable Energies, Murad Ajel, the CEO of Sonatrach Group, Noordin Daoudi, and the CEO of Naftal, Jamal Shardoud, along with several senior officials from hydrocarbons, mining, energy, and renewable energy sectors. Upon arrival at Ouagadougou International Airport, the minister and his accompanying delegation were welcomed by Burkina Faso's Minister of State and Minister of Local Administration and Mobility, Emile Zerbo, the Minister of Energy, Mines and Quarries, Yacouba Zabre Gouba, and representatives of the Algerian diplomatic corps accredited in Ouagadougou. This visit, which is part of the implementation of the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune's instructions, aims to explore ways and means to enhance bilateral cooperation between Algeria and Burkina Faso, particularly in the fields of energy, mining, and hydrocarbons. It also seeks to develop the bilateral partnership, promote the exchanges of expertise and experience, and strengthen joint investment opportunities between the two countries. The Minister of War Veterans and Right Holders, Abdelmalik Tashrif, stated today in Adrar that the nuclear test conducted by France in southern Algeria decades ago constituted a fully fledged crime that violated nature and the human right to exist. During his opening remarks at the seventh symposium titled Nuclear Test or French Nuclear Test in the Algerian Sahara, Between Duty of Memory and the Demand of Justice, the minister explained that the French nuclear test carried out in the Algerian Sahara remained a deep wound in our conscience, as they represented a moment of complete abdication of moral and historical responsibility. He further explained at this meeting, which was led by professors and researchers specializing in the history of the glorious war of liberation and the crimes of French nuclear tests in the Algerian Sahara, that scientific studies and field research have proven that the effects of those nuclear tests and the resulting radiation spared nothing, poisoning the environment, polluting the atmosphere, and causing deaths, birth defects, and chronic illnesses, and it bequeathed sufferings to generations. Mr. Tashrif praised this scientific and historical gathering, which addressed and documented the nuclear crime, noting that the dynamic of scientific research in victorious Algeria, which has become today a driving force for change, renewal, and triumphs. He also pointed to the directives of the country's highest authorities, which believe that science is the cornerstone of development and prosperity and the ultimate weapon for preserving national memory and safeguarding our sovereignty. At the end of this news bulletin, there is a special program devoted to the French nuclear test in the desert of Algeria. The first session of the Algerian-Mauritanian Joint Parliamentary Grand Commission kicked off today, Friday, here in Algiers, held under the theme Promoting the Parliamentary Role in Strengthening Algerian-Mauritanian Economic Cooperation towards an Integrated and Sustainable Partnership. This session is co-chaired by the Speaker of the People's National Assembly, Brahim Boughali, and the President of the Mauritanian National Assembly, Mohamed Bamba Megat, in the presence of the Secretary of State to the Minister of Foreign Affairs in charge of African Affairs, Bakhta Salma Mansouri. This session takes place amid the growing momentum in Algerian-Mauritanian relations, reflecting the shared political will of the leaders of both countries to enhance consultation and coordination, strengthen fraternal ties and deepen complementarity between the two brotherly peoples. Speaking to Radio Algeria International, the chairman of the Mauritania-Algeria Parliamentary Friendship Group, Daha Sohaib, said the following.
The
first joint Algerian-Mauritanian parliamentary session, which is being held in the Algerian capital, falls within the framework of the strong relations that unite Mauritania and Algeria. These relations are today in their height date thanks to the two countries' leaderships. There are mutual visits, joint action, fruitful cooperation, good neighborliness, and convergent views about the situation in the world in addition to exchanges. Hopefully, the dialogue will culminate in a fruitful cooperation between the Mauritanian and Algerian parliaments that will benefit the two countries and peoples.
Over the two-day session, 4 working meetings will focus on bilateral cooperation, its areas and prospects, highlighting the commitment of both countries to reinforce consultation mechanisms, serve common interests, and support the development of their bilateral partnership. Discussions will also address several issues related to strengthening economic, trade, and investment cooperation, as well as expanding exchanges between the two countries. To the Middle East now, Israeli occupation forces fired tear gas toward worshippers at a mosque in the town of Kafr Malik, east of Ramallah, on Friday, according to local sources. Earlier in the day, settlers attacked residents in Talfit, assaulting them and firing live ammunition, wounding a young man in the thigh and leaving several others with injuries and bruises. They also smashed the windows of several vehicles. Witnesses said Israeli forces provided protection to the settlers and fired live rounds, stun grenades, and tear gas at residents and their homes, causing cases of suffocation. This came as Israeli occupation forces detained 5 Palestinians from the town of Qarawat Bani Hassan in the central west Bank province of Salfit earlier today. According to local sources, a Palestinian man was killed on Thursday evening after being shot by the Israeli forces fire east of the Gaza city, according to medical sources at Al-Shifa hospital. 3 other Palestinians, including a woman, were injured by Israeli gunfire in various areas of the Gaza Strip. And finally, U.S. President Donald Trump said on Thursday that he expects an agreement with Iran to take shape over the next month, warning Tehran that failure to reach a consensus poses major dangers. Asked by a reporter at the White House about the timeline he envisages for a deal to be ironed out, the U.S. President said he believed that over the next month a deal should happen, stressing that reaching a deal was necessary to avoid what he called a traumatic situation. The U.S. and Iran held negotiations last Friday in Oman for the first time since the attacks in June and are expected to hold more rounds of talks at a yet undetermined date. The sit-down marked the end of a roughly 8-month suspension. Amid the negotiations, the U.S. has significantly increased its military footprint in the region as Trump warns Iran that it must make a deal. Already, the U.S. has deployed the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier from the South China Sea. Iran said the U.S. and Israel fabricate pretexts for military intervention and regime change, warning it would respond to any military attack, even if limited, and insisting on lifting Western economic sanctions in exchange for restrictions on its nuclear program. Uranium enrichment remains a central point of dispute. The U.S. demands Iran halt uranium enrichment and transfer highly enriched uranium out of the country, which is a non-starter for Tehran. With this, we come to the end of this news bulletin. Time now for our weekly programs. We start first with this special program devoted to the French nuclear test carried out in the region of Regan in the south of Algeria, and will be followed by another program by my colleague Hannah Dalil. And for me, I'll meet you again tomorrow for a fresh edition of a news bulletin. Goodbye.
On February 13, 1960, colonial France conducted a large-scale nuclear test in the region of Regan in southern Algeria. Experts say that as many as 42,000 Algerians were killed and thousands others were irradiated in 17 nuclear tests carried out by France. France tested its first nuclear bomb in a Tenerife area, a portion of the Sahara that straddles Algeria and Mali some 30 miles south of Regan. Named Gerboise Bleu, the bomb had a blast capacity of 70 kilotons, or more than 4 times the strength of the US bomb dropped on Hiroshima at the end of the World War II. In 2 years, the French tested 4 bombs above ground in Tenerife in the Algerian desert. When France finally left, it buried a range of contaminated objects throughout the 2 areas. Metal from remote control towers that activated the bombs, engine parts from planes that flew into Gerboise Bleu's mushroom cloud to gather radiation data, and military-grade tracks placed in the blast radius to act as barometers of its power. But Saharan winds later swept away the sand covering these nuclear tombs. Southern Algerians, the vast majority of whom were never informed by the French about residual radiation hazards, and in some areas, and in some cases, the testing dates. They began stripping the items for resources. Residents of Regan say there were strange upticks of medical issues that first appeared during the 70s and continue to this day. Babies born with atrophied limbs, cancers of liver, stomach and skin, cases of temporary blindness among those who saw the brutal flash of light as it ripped through the region about 6:30 a.m. that day 60 years ago. Despite protests from the international community in several African states, France continued its nuclear tests for years. In the 1990s, France was still conducting nuclear tests in the Pacific Ocean, despite disapproval from many countries. It always claimed that it took great care to ensure that radioactive energy from the bombs did not affect people living in the remote areas where the tests were taking place.
Hello and welcome to Discover Algeria, a weekly program in which we'll let you discover or know more about Algeria's heritage. Today we'll take you to the desert, the Algerian desert, known as the Sahara, and more precisely to the Issaouane Erg, which is a sand sea. Here it is called generally Harg. It is located in eastern Algeria between the Tinhert Plateau to the north and the Fednoun Plateau to the south. Ergs are vast areas of moving sand with little to no vegetation cover. Considered to be part of the Sahara Desert, the Issaouane Erg covers an area of approximately 38,000 kilometers square in Algeria's portion of the Sahara Desert. The most common landforms in the image are star dunes and Barkhan dunes. Star dunes are formed when sand is transported from variable wind directions, whereas Barkhan dunes form in a single dominant wind regime. But what is a Barkhan? A Barkhan or Barkhan dune is an arc-shaped sand-ridged or a crescent-shaped one comprising well-sorted sand. This type of dune possesses two horns that face downwind with a slip face, or as is it called also the downwind slope, at the angle of repose of sand, or approximately 35 degrees. Wind side is packed by the wind and stands at about 15 degrees. Simple Barkhan dunes may stretch from meters to 100 meters or so between the tips and the horns. The word is of Turkic origin, borrowed into English via Russian. Simple Barkhan dunes may appear as larger compound Barkhan or mega Barkhan dunes, which may migrate by the wind. Barkhans and mega Barkhans may coalesce into ridges that extend for hundreds of kilometers. As Barkhan dunes migrate, smaller dunes outpace larger dunes, bumping into the rear of the larger dune and eventually appear to punch through the large dune to appear on the other side. The process seems to be similar to waves of light, sound or water that pass directly through each other. The detailed mechanism is, however, very different, being non-linear. These are known as solitons. The dunes emulate soliton behavior, but unlike solitons, the sand particles don't pass through each other. When the smaller dune rear ends the larger dune, the winds begin to deposit sand on the rear dune while blowing sand off the front dune without replenishing it. Eventually, the rear dune has assumed dimensions similar to the former front dune, which has now become a smaller, fast-moving dune that pulls away with the wind. Examples of Balkan dunes are found, in addition to the Isawen Erg, as I told you, here in Algeria. There are many other Balkan dunes in Peru, the Joya Arequipa, for instance, also in other places around the world. It's worth noting that Balkan dunes have been observed on Mars, where the thin atmosphere produces winds strong enough to move sand and dust. Superimposition of the two dune times suggests that wind regimes have changed through time. The active nature of this portion of the Arc is well illustrated. And smaller dunes form and migrate along the flanks of the larger dunes and sand ridges. Occasional precipitation fills basins formed by the dunes. As the water evaporates, salt deposits are left behind, which appear as bluish-white areas. To be more precise, the Isawen Erg is located near the Ahagar Mountains, and it is part of a major dune field, and the Erg's southern portion is located in Sudan. The Isawen Erg is also flanked by the Libyan Erg of Murzouk. In the north, it ends at the Tinnerhead Plateau, and in the south, as I told you earlier, at the Fednoun Plateau. Sand in the Isawen Erg below the level of the sand dune has accumulated to a depth of 20 to 30 meters. And it has Barkhan dunes, now you do know what Barkhan is, as well as star dunes of 300 to 430 meters high. It's worth noting that the Isawen Erg contains Neolithic artifacts such as sculptures and paintings from the Kifian culture. It also contains oil. The Tifernin oil field is explored by the Algerian state oil company Sonatrach, which began developing the oil field with foreign assistance there. The oil field has been in production since late 1998. Noting that the whole region is part of the Tassili Niger World Heritage Site that covers a vast area of desert landscape in southern Algeria, stretching from Niger and Libyan border area, north and east of Janet, as far as Ilizi and Mgid. It includes the whole of the Tassili Niger mountain range, as well as the sands and dune areas in the extreme southeast of the country, adjoining the Libyan Tadrart Akakus World Heritage Property. The site is listed under both natural and cultural criteria, and from a cultural perspective ranks as the premier rock art site anywhere in the world.
إذاعة الجزائر الدولية تنقل إليكم صوت الجزائر، تضعكم في الصورة وترسم لكم الطريق عبر محللين مختصين ومراسليها في العالم. إذاعة الجزائر الدولية صوتنا في العالم.
Sintonizan Radio Argelia Internacional. El diario hablado.
Hola, ¿qué tal? El presidente Abdelmajid Tebboune, en su calidad de actual presidente del MAEP, destaca los logros de la presidencia argelina del foro y su compromiso de reposicionar el mecanismo como una herramienta estratégica creíble y eficaz. Los argelinos conmemoran este viernes el 66º aniversario de las explosiones nucleares francesas llevadas a cabo en la sureña región de Ergen, explosiones que constituyen un crimen en toda regla. Y la violencia persiste en Gaza y se intensifica en Cisjordania, donde las fuerzas de ocupación israelíes sitiaron varias mezquitas atacando a los fieles después de las oraciones del viernes. Señoras y señores, cordiales saludos a todos. Les damos la bienvenida a nuestra edición de este viernes 13 de febrero. Arrancaron pues este viernes en Addis Abeba los trabajos de la 35ª sesión de la Cumbre de Jefes de Estado y de Gobierno del Mecanismo Africano de Evaluación entre Pares, MAEP, ello con la participación del primer ministro argelino Sifir Regueb, quien representa al presidente Abdelmajid Tebboune, actual presidente del foro. Y justamente en su calidad de actual presidente del foro, el presidente Tebboune destacó que durante su presidencia del foro, o sea, entre 2024 y 2026, Argelia obró por reposicionar el mecanismo como una herramienta estratégica creíble y eficaz en consonancia con las prioridades de la Unión Africana y la Agenda 2063. En un discurso pronunciado en su nombre por el primer ministro Sifir Regueb, el presidente de la República explicó que esta cumbre, que marca el fin de la presidencia rotatoria de Argelia en el foro, representa un importante momento institucional para entregar la presidencia del foro de forma fluida y ordenada a la hermana República de Uganda. Escuchen.
Esta cumbre, que marcará el fin de la presidencia rotatoria de Argelia del Foro del Mecanismo Africano de Evaluación entre Pares, constituye un importante momento institucional que permite, por un lado, la presentación de los logros de la presidencia argelina durante el periodo 2024-2026 y, por otro, el traspaso fluido y ordenado de la presidencia del Foro a la hermana República de Uganda, de conformidad con las normas internas del MAEP y las decisiones pertinentes de la Unión Africana. El compromiso de Argelia como miembro fundador con la promoción de los principios y el logro de los objetivos del MAEP es una extensión natural de su participación activa dentro de los mecanismos continentales de la Unión Africana. Este compromiso se basa en el respeto a la soberanía de los Estados miembros, el sistema multilateral africano y la cooperación intergubernamental entre los países del continente. Asimismo, es coherente con la tradición diplomática argelina, orientada a promover el diálogo y fortalecer las soluciones africanas a los desafíos africanos.
Refiriéndose a los logros de la presidencia argelina, el presidente enumeró varios logros durante este periodo. Escuchemos otra vez al primer ministro argelino Sifir Regueb.
El mandato presidencial de Argelia se caracterizó por varios logros importantes, entre ellos, en particular, la adopción e implementación del Plan Estratégico del Mecanismo Africano de Evaluación por Pares para el periodo 2025-2028, así como el fortalecimiento de los mecanismos de evaluación de la gobernanza mediante la realización y la ejecución de evaluaciones sectoriales y específicas. También la integración de la gobernanza electrónica como tema clave en el mecanismo africano de evaluación por pares, la promoción de la contribución del mecanismo africano a la prevención de conflictos, en particular mediante el diálogo institucional con el Consejo de Paz y Seguridad de la Unión Africana y los avances significativos en la implementación de la iniciativa para establecer una agencia africana de calificación crediticia, una iniciativa estratégica destinada a fortalecer la resiliencia económica y financiera del continente.
Además de su continuo apoyo político e institucional al MAEP, la presidencia argelina ha brindado apoyo financiero mediante una contribución voluntaria de $1 millón estadounidenses, recordó el presidente Abdelmejid Tebboune, subrayando que esta contribución refleja la confianza en el mecanismo y su papel fundamental en el fortalecimiento y la promoción de la gobernanza en el continente africano. Al término de los trabajos de su 48ª sesión ordinaria, el Consejo Ejecutivo de la Unión Africana elogió los esfuerzos de Argelia al servicio del continente africano. Los ministros felicitaron a Argelia por acoger la primera conferencia ministerial africana sobre la producción farmacéutica local, así como por su liderazgo en el desarrollo de la industria farmacéutica. El Consejo también destacó el compromiso del país bajo el liderazgo del presidente Abdelmejid Tebboune, en particular mediante la exitosa organización de la Feria Comercial Intraafricana, reconociendo la importancia de esta feria como la principal plataforma africana dedicada al comercio, la inversión, la innovación y la cooperación industrial. El Consejo también celebró los resultados excepcionales de la misma, que culminaron, recordemos, con la firma de contratos comerciales y de inversión por un total de $48.300 millones. Y al margen de su participación en los trabajos del Consejo Ejecutivo de la Unión Africana, el ministro de Estado, ministro de Asuntos Exteriores, Comunidad Nacional en el Extranjero y Asuntos Africanos, Hod Attaf, mantuvo en Addis Abeba conversaciones bilaterales con numerosos de sus homólogos. Se trata del ministro de Asuntos Exteriores y Relaciones Internacionales del Reino de Lesoto, el ministro de Asuntos Exteriores y Diáspora de la República de Kenia, el ministro de Asuntos Exteriores, Integración Regional y Cooperación para el Desarrollo de la República de Burundi, la ministra de Relaciones Internacionales y Comercio de la República de Namibia, el ministro de Asuntos Exteriores, Cooperación y Mauritanos en el Extranjero de la República de Mauritania. Las entrevistas permitieron intercambiar opiniones sobre la situación del continente africano, así como brindó la oportunidad de examinar las perspectivas de desarrollar las relaciones bilaterales. En otro asunto, el ministro de Estado, ministro argelino de Hidrocarburos y Minas, Mohamed Arkab, llegó anoche a Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, para una visita de trabajo destinada a fortalecer la cooperación bilateral. Esta visita, que se realiza de conformidad con las orientaciones del presidente de la República, Abdelmejid Tebboune, tiene como objetivo examinar las vías de fortalecer la cooperación bilateral entre Argelia y Burkina Faso, en particular en los sectores de energía, minería e hidrocarburos, con miras a desarrollar alianzas bilaterales, intercambiar conocimientos y fortalecer las oportunidades de inversión conjunta entre ambos países. Y hablando siempre de energía, Argelia enfatizó ayer su compromiso de fortalecer su alianza energética estratégica con la Unión Europea mediante inversiones conjuntas en los sectores de hidrocarburos y energías renovables, con el fin de garantizar un suministro sostenible y reforzar la seguridad energética, a la vez que consolida su posición como actor clave en el mercado regional e internacional del gas. Sara Hallel.
Este compromiso por la consolidación de la alianza estratégica se reafirmó durante el sexto diálogo de alto nivel sobre energía entre Argelia y la Unión Europea, copresidido en Argelia por el ministro de Estado, ministro argelino de Hidrocarburos y Minas, Mohamed Arkab, el ministro argelino de Energía y Energías Renovables, Murad Adjel, y el comisario europeo de Energía y Vivienda, Dan Jorgensen. En una declaración conjunta facilitada a la prensa tras la reunión, el ministro de Estado, ministro argelino de Hidrocarburos, Mohamed Arkab, afirmó que Argelia se compromete a consolidar su alianza energética estratégica con la Unión Europea, sirviendo los intereses comunes y consolidando su posición como actor clave en el mercado regional e internacional del gas. El ministro de Estado reafirmó el compromiso de Argelia de mantener su papel como proveedor líder y fiable de gas natural al mercado europeo, en el marco de una colaboración basada en la confianza, el respeto mutuo y y el equilibrio de intereses. El responsable argelino precisó que la reunión brindó la oportunidad de debatir las perspectivas de inversión en el sector de hidrocarburos argelino, en particular en la exploración, la producción y el desarrollo de infraestructuras con el fin de garantizar un suministro sostenible y fortalecer la seguridad energética. Por su parte, el ministro argelino de Energía y Energías Renovables, Morad Adjal, especificó que la reunión permitió debatir diversos puntos relativos al fortalecimiento de la cooperación estratégica entre ambas partes, en particular en lo relativo al desarrollo de energías nuevas y renovables, el desarrollo de infraestructuras y proyectos energéticos entre ambas orillas del Mediterráneo, como el proyecto de interconexión eléctrica, el proyecto de desarrollo de hidrógeno verde. En este sentido, destacó la importancia que Argelia concede a estos proyectos, que constituyen una base esencial para una cooperación fructífera entre Argelia y Europa y que probablemente fortalecerán la posición de Argelia como proveedor fiable de energía limpia y sostenible. El comisario europeo Dan Jorgensen elogió la sólida relación entre Argelia y la Unión Europea en el sector energético, subrayando que Argelia ha sido un socio clave para Europa en el sector del gas durante varias décadas. Después de haber puesto de relieve el importante potencial de Argelia en el ámbito de las energías renovables, el funcionario europeo destacó el compromiso de fortalecer la cooperación bilateral en esa área prioritaria y prometedora en el marco de la transición energética.
Y Argel albergó hoy la primera sesión de la Gran Comisión Parlamentaria